Morning. The committee will come to order. The ranking member is in another hearing. She'll be here after a while, and my understanding is she just wants to submit her opening statement for the record. If she would want to give it, we'll, of course, give her that opportunity should she wish to do so. And we'll probably be joined by additional members from both sides of the aisle here shortly, but we're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of everyone's time. The mission of the Small Business Administration is to help small businesses compete and succeed in the marketplace. As we have heard many times from small businesses testifying before this committee, access to capital is one of the biggest challenges small businesses face when starting or expanding their businesses. To address the financing gap that small businesses can face, the SBA offers the 7A loan program for small businesses that have a plan in place for growth, but lack the qualifications for conventional lending. SBA offers these small businesses government-guaranteed loans through private lending partners. Recent growth in the program has led to a closer look at the SBA's oversight tools. As a result of multiple hearings, meetings, and briefings, I, along with the ranking member, Ms. Velasquez, introduced H.R. 4743, the Small Business 7A Lending Oversight Reform Act of 2018. We couldn't come up with a shorter name. Our Senate counterparts have introduced similar legislation. By strengthening the SBA's Office of Credit Risk Management and refocusing on the credit elsewhere test, this bicameral and bipartisan legislation aims to ensure the integrity of the program while bringing stability to small businesses that truly require the services of the SBA. H.R. 4743 and the Senate version unanimously passed through both the House and Senate Small Business Committees in March of 2018, and I hope they will soon be brought before both the full House and the Senate. The subject of today's hearing is further justification that more oversight of the SBA is needed to ensure that taxpayer dollars are preserved only for small businesses that cannot qualify for traditional lending. A recent evaluation by the SBA's Office of Inspector General confirmed that the committee had already suspected, confirmed what the committee had already suspected, that the SBA may have allowed nearly $2 billion of ineligible guaranteed 7A loans to non-small businesses. The OIG's findings are troubling, as it appears that many small poultry farmers were unable to operate their businesses independently, thus violating the SBA's affiliation rules and other regulations. Today, members will have an opportunity to hear from the OIG about their findings and from the SBA about how the agency intends to implement the OIG's recommendations to ensure that future 7A loans meet the statutory, regulatory, and SBI requirements for eligibility. I would appreciate very much the witness's testimony here shortly, and we look forward to your testimony. And again, we will allow the ranking member's opening statement to be admitted for the record when she gets here. And if committee members have an opening statement prepared, I would ask that they be submitted for the record. And I'll take just a moment to explain the lighting system, which is very, I think you've both testified, 5-minute rule. The green light will be on for 4 minutes. The yellow light will come on, letting you know you have a minute to wrap up. And then the red light will come on to let you know that your time's up. And we'd like you to stay within that, if at all possible. Since the ranking member got here so fast, it would be appropriate, if she would like to go ahead and whenever she's ready, to give her opening statement. Now I'll yield to the ranking member.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for being here. Chicken is America's favorite protein, topping beef and pork for the past 30 years. In 2016 alone, the USDA reported that American farmers raised over $8.8 billion chickens valued at $26 billion for domestic consumption and export. Public demand has resulted in significant changes to the poultry growing industry. Where there were once 1.6 million independent farms across the country, a rapid shift to a vertical integration model has resulted in just 25,000 contract farms, raising the vast majority of America's poultry. The very nature of the industry is what brings us here today. Growers need capital to buy farms, build chicken coops, and buy feed to run their operations. Over the past 4 years, the 7A program has experienced significant growth in poultry lending. As noted by the IG report, SBA has guaranteed over 1,500 poultry loans totaling $1.8 billion from 2012 through 2016. On the surface, this seems like we are helping small firms get access to capital. However, the nature of these growers' relationship with integrators suggests that loans may not be assisting what most of us consider small businesses. As well as we will hear from Mr. Ware, the level of control exercised over the growers is significant, from how to design and build their chicken coops to feeding and watering schedules. Integrators have their hands in almost every aspect of a grower business. Let's be clear about what is going on here. Large integrators own the chickens, sell the feed to the farmers, dictate the specifications of how to build the grow houses, all while pushing the cost and risk of financing and owning these very capital-intensive structures onto the farmers. Every report I have read and discussions I have had with stakeholders indicates there is little in the way of traditional lending to poultry growers. The industry relies almost exclusively on the government-guaranteed lending from USDA and SBA used by growers to buy farms, construct chicken houses, and fund operation. This raises serious red flags. While we all support the SBA program for delivering credit to small businesses that cannot get it elsewhere, it is troubling if the program is being used to displace the growth of a traditional lending market and put taxpayers' money at risk. I look forward to hearing more from the IG about the details of their report and finding. I am also very interested in hearing from SBA on why they relied on a 1993 regional agency decision based on one contract to determine affiliation or lack thereof in these contracts for so long. Further, I am interested in how the regulatory changes from 2016 are applied to poultry loan applications and what SBA plans to do to address the affiliation concerns raised by the IG going forward. Thank you both for being here. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields back. And I'd now like to introduce our distinguished panel here today. Since both have testified here before, I'm going to keep these relatively short. We first have our first witness will be Mr. Hannibal Mike Ware, who currently serves as the Acting Inspector General for the Small Business Administration. The President has nominated him to serve as the permanent Inspector General, and both the Senate Small Business and the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committees have favorably reported his nomination to the full Senate, and so congratulations, and hopefully everything will go smoothly for you there, and we look forward to hearing your testimony here today. And our second witness will be William Manger, who is the Associate Administrator for the Office of Capital Access at the SBA. One of the programs Mr. Manger's office administers and oversees is the 7A loan program, so we also appreciate your testimony and your response to questions here shortly. So we'd now like to turn to Mr. Ware, who is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Chabot, Ranking Member Velasquez, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and for your continued support of the Office of Inspector General. We recently published the results of our evaluation of SBA's 7A loans made to poultry farmers. We independently initiated this review after speaking with the staff of this committee, who raised a question about the controlling nature of contracts between large chicken companies, known as integrators, and poultry farmers. We performed a preliminary assessment and took note of the increases to the size of this segment of the loan portfolio, to the size of these loans, and to the terms of these loans. We subsequently sought to gain an understanding of the operations of this industry and the practical application of SBA's regulations for loans to farmers within the industry. We reviewed federal laws and regulations, SBA policies and procedures governing the 7A loan program, files of performing and defaulted loans, as well as grower-integrator contracts, agreements, and communications. We further reviewed U.S. Department of Agriculture's loan program guidance, industry-related economic and analytical publications, relevant publications from state university agricultural extensions, and publications from industry trade associations. We also reviewed SBA internal communications, guidance, and selected SBA Office of Credit Risk Management lender reviews. We found that 7A loans made to growers did not meet regulatory and SBA requirements for eligibility. The integrators in our sample exercised such comprehensive control over the growers that we believe the concerns appear affiliative under SBA regulations. Therefore, SBA and lenders approved 7A loans that were apparently ineligible under NBA size standard regulations and requirements. Specifically, in our review of 7A loans made to growers, as well as review of defaulted 7A loans to growers, we found integrator control exercised through a series of contractual restrictions, management agreements, oversight inspections, and market controls. This control overcame practically all of a grower's ability to operate their business independent of integrator mandates. This control was enforced through close integrator oversight, management agreements, and grower-integrator communication. A grower's failure to comply with these requirements could result in a significant decrease in integrator payments, a reduction in flock placements, or a cancellation of the contract. A grower's economic viability was based upon a performing production contract with an integrator and is the true basis for grower income and facility value. As a result, from fiscal year 2012 to fiscal year 2016, SBA guaranteed approximately $1.8 billion in loans that may be ineligible. To improve SBA's oversight of the 7A loan program, we made two recommendations to the Associate Administrator for the Office of Capital Access. The first, to review the loans cited in the evaluation sample to determine whether SBA loan specialists and lenders made a proper size determination given the apparent affiliation based upon comprehensive contractual oversight and market control, and take the appropriate corrective actions. And the second, to review the arrangements between integrators and growers under the revised regulations and establish and implement controls such as supplemental guidance to ensure SBA loan specialists and lenders make appropriate affiliation determinations. SBA management agreed to both of these recommendations. Both of these recommendations remain open in a resolved status, meaning OIG has agreed to management's planned corrective action. I am proud of the work performed by our auditors. We certainly appreciate the broader implications of this review on the availability of 7A lending resources and on SBA's oversight of the various segments of the loan portfolio. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Menger, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Shabbat, Ranking Member Velasquez, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. The recent Inspector General report examined the agency's poultry loans and lending history. From their examination, 2 recommendations were issued, both of which SBA has agreed. 1, SBA has asked to look at 11 loans that served as the sample size and basis of their review. And 2, SBA was asked to consider further guidance to ensure that appropriate determinations of affiliation are being made. The loan activity highlighted by the Inspector General occurred over a 5-year period beginning 7 years ago. Having joined the agency in March of 2017, I will need to rely on program office background and data, particularly during the 5-year timeframe. Before discussing the IG recommendations, it might be helpful to share some data and provide an overview of our lending. Today, our overall 7A loan portfolio has a loan count of just over 265,000 loans and an outstanding balance of $88 billion. Within that, poultry loans represent 1% of the entire 7A portfolio. The performance of poultry loans has been very good. These loans have a delinquency rate of 0.34%. This compares favorably to the 7A average of 0.7%. These loans are being made across 32 states and Puerto Rico. The top 5 states are Mississippi, Georgia, Arkansas, Texas, and North Carolina. Examples of the types of loan being made include a $600,000 loan to a Kentucky couple who were employed in farming but wanted to start their own business. Another was a $1 million loan in Mississippi to help save a local family-owned but failing poultry operation. The IG report questioned whether the nature of the agreement between the poultry farmer and the business supplying the chicks is so controlling that SBA should consider the two businesses to be affiliated. This concept of affiliation is relevant in determining whether a business is small because the size is determined by aggregating the revenues or employees of the business with those of all of its affiliates. In the Small Business Act, Congress specifically included agricultural enterprises in the definition of small business. Agricultural enterprises are identified under the NAICS code system as including poultry and egg, forestry and logging, cattle ranching, and hog and pig farming, to name a few. In our lending, SBA has adhered to long-standing policy guidance that the grower-integrator contract standing alone does not bring about affiliation. In addition, SBA in 2016 removed from the affiliation regulations the provision that considers contractual relationships that may cause economic dependence of one business on another. The agency concluded that in general, only firms that had common ownership or common management should be considered affiliated when determining eligibility for SBA financial assistance. As a result, SBA's current regulations do not consider whether the contract between an integrator and a poultry farmer results in economic dependence when determining the size of the poultry farmer that applies for financial assistance. Soon after joining the SBA, I began an examination of various loan policies and practices in my office. On issues like franchise agreements, we made changes that were well received by borrowers, lenders, and other interested parties. We also took action to update our standard operating procedures last fall, with several aspects that improve program compliance and ensure prudent lending for all loans, including poultry. First, we changed some loan terms to a maximum of 15 years, tying that to the useful life of equipment. Second, we provided guidance that our financing is limited to farmland used only in the operation of a business. And third, for businesses with a change of ownership or with startups, we now require at least 10% equity. As we continue to conduct our review of poultry lending, we want to hear from all our stakeholders, and we certainly welcome your views and want to hear from this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'll now lead off the questionings by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. And I'll go to you first, Mr. Menger. What specific steps has the SBA taken since you were made aware of the Inspector General findings? I know you discussed that to some degree, but if you could go over those.
Certainly. So we did look at the 11 loans as requested by the IG's report. In fact, I have a report on the 11 loans. And again, under our evaluation, again, using the 25-year longstanding policy of the agency, we determined that the contract in place did not create affiliation between the small rural farmer and the integrator, because the ability to profit and bear the risk of loss due to their own efforts was still apparent with the small rural farmer.
Mr. Ware, let me go to you. Are you aware of any other industries, either agriculture or otherwise, that extend such control over their growers? Are those growers eligible for SBA loans, and do you have any plans to examine any of those loans as well?
Right. Our review in this case was specifically to the poultry loans. So we didn't look at others, although we came across, of course, the hog industry being one that's kind of close, but it wasn't our intent to review that because of how closely they line up. So we think that the findings of this report could be used by the agency the same way.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Menger. Since being made aware of the Inspector General's findings, have you provided any guidance for any lenders? Do you intend to publish any kind of guidance or communicate with lenders or their trade associations going forward? Is there any kind of communications effort that you think should be made there?
After the report was released, we did make a statement again that we were reviewing the 11 loans. Upon completion of that review, we found that they had been done according to longstanding policy of the agency. We also informed the lenders that the loans that were made under similar circumstances, in that case, we would also honor the guarantee, because obviously there was a lot of concern from the lenders that guarantees would not be honored. But we wanted to assure them again that the loans that we looked at, all 11 loans, were done properly, and so therefore the guarantee would be honored.
Mr. Ware, did your office examine whether or not the credit elsewhere test was being applied properly to lenders, and should some of these growers have been able to qualify for conventional loans or USDA loans?
As part of this review, we did not look specifically at the credit elsewhere test. We looked simply based on were they eligible for these types of loans,
Well,
eligible for the 7A program.
Do you think you should have gone and looked at the credit elsewhere?
Well, the credit elsewhere test, we have a separate review that's doing that, not only for poultry but across the board. So running in separate lanes but touching everything.
Okay. Mr. Manger, are lenders properly applying the credit elsewhere test before offering 7A loans for poultry farming or other related industries, as far as you're aware? And why are these growers oftentimes unable to obtain credit elsewhere, particularly when they already have been offered a contract from a large poultry company with a long history in the industry?
No, I appreciate the question, and certainly, Mr. Chairman, credit elsewhere is always something that the agency and my office is looking at, because we want to ensure, as the ranking member said in her opening statement, we want to make sure that we are making loans available to those that need the capital, that are unable to access the capital conventionally. Again, our office takes great pains in ensuring that loans are only being made to those that are unable to obtain credit elsewhere. In evaluating the loans, we have looked at them, and again, these people had in their files the proper certification that they were unable to, the lender makes the certification that these lenders would be unable to make the loan without the SBA guarantee. And so that is what we have seen, and again, these loans are to small rural farmers that many times there are not lots of other ways that they can access the capital except through our program.
Mr. Ware, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I thought I needed to expound quickly on what I said before. So the basis of this review was their eligibility. And once we ran into the affiliation concerns that in our review was so clear based on the Code of Federal Regulations and what is detailed in there, that credit elsewhere didn't become a primary function for us to look into for this particular review.
Thank you very much. My time's expired. The ranking member is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manger, you stated in your testimony that the delinquency rates are very low on SBA poultry loans. I think you mentioned 0.3% compared to others, right? So if these loans are such a safe bet, why do they need to have an SBA guarantee loan? So are you telling me that they are so good and they make so much sense? Why is it that they cannot get a loan through traditional lending?
So, Ranking Member, many times these loans are made for the acquisition of land, and in some cases, actually, the land is quite a large piece of property. And again, the individual does not have the collateral and some of the other prudent lending standards that a conventional loan would be made under in order to acquire not only the property, but then to build the broiler houses on the property and all that goes into creating one of these farms. So in those situations, again, the lender makes the determination that they would not be willing to make that loan because of the risk inherent in making the loan, that unless they have the guarantee provided by the Small Business Administration.
Okay. Can you tell me, Mr. Manger, what reasons are typically cited by lenders to fulfill the credit elsewhere test to make these loans?
So I would have to get back to you to see exactly.
Well, this is an important issue.
Absolutely.
Because it determines whether or not you are following the law. If you cannot answer me, if you cannot answer this question, how could you tell me that those loans were...
Ma'am, I can tell you that we take the credit elsewhere standards extremely, extremely seriously.
But you cannot
in my
answer.
office.
You cannot give.
I cannot give you some of the
provide.
specific
Thank you.
examples
Thank you.
of what the reasons were.
Okay, Mr. Ware, the Pew Charitable Trust has also published reports that examine the poultry industry. They stated that government subsidies were a significant driver of the growth we have seen over the past years. 50 years. Did your investigators find many instances of non-government backed lending in the poultry growth industry?
We did not.
Are either of you concerned the growth of SBA involvement in poultry farms is pushing traditional lending out of this market?
If I was to answer that is probably a viable concern, but it wasn't the focus of our review.
So, Mr. Manger.
Ma'am, as I stated in my opening statement, this is only 1% of the overall 7A portfolio, representing 1.7% of the dollars.
How much dollars?
1.7% of the overall portfolio is in dollars. And that is not crowding out other businesses that need to access capital. The poultry industry is not crowding out.
That's not my concern.
Businesses.
My concern is if you comply with the credit elsewhere test. That's my concern.
And I can give you one reason probably why a lot of these loans were made this way, because many of the loans were given a longer term than a conventional loan would offer. And that is one reason in credit elsewhere where we allow for an SBA loan to be made, because the ability to repay the loan by the small farmer needs a longer term, and it would not be available in a conventional loan. It's only available in an SBA loan. So that is one of the reasons in credit elsewhere why these loans would be eligible, because in some instances, the term of the loan was up to 21 years.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Should there be similar requirements aligning contract length with poultry loan length to protect the farmers and taxpayers?
As a matter of fact, I'll just restate what we did in the SOP that became effective on January 1st of this year. We have now limited the term of the loan to 15 years, tying that to the life of the useful equipment. In this case, it would be the broiler houses. That was not the case before January 1st of this year. We also have now limited the amount of farmland that can be acquired only to the farmland that is necessary for the specific business. We found in some instances additional farmland was being acquired. We do not allow that except for what is necessary with the specific operation. And finally, and importantly, to talk about the risk, we are now requiring for a change of ownership or a startup. Many of these poultry businesses were startups. We are now requiring a 10% equity injection from the borrower. That is equity coming from the borrower, not from the taxpayer.
Generally's time's expired. Does she need an additional minute? Or we can go to second round.
yes.
If you'd like. All right, we'll probably go to second round. The gentleman from Missouri, Vice Chairman of this committee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would seem to me that the discussion today centers around the difference between a franchise and an affiliate. Mr. Ware, can you explain to me at the very essence here, what your definition of affiliate is, and why you believe that these farms don't comply.
Sure. Thanks for the question. So we don't, the OIG doesn't have a problem necessarily with the relationship between a franchisor and a franchisee, as long as the contracts are not controlling by the franchisor. So
Well, what's your definition of controlling? I mean, because every franchise controls its franchisee to a certain extent. I mean, it depends on whether you're talking about an auto dealer, or you're talking about McDonald's, or you're talking about Cargill or Tyson. Those folks all have control over the people that are doing business.
Correct, sir. However, then if the control is comprehensive by rule and by the law, it is so comprehensive that it
Well, what's your definition of comprehensive?
Comprehensive means so it's not every franchise that would qualify for a small business administration loan. My definition.
Do you make loans to McDonald's? Do you make loans to car dealerships?
I am not certain exactly who the SBA makes
Manger,
loans
do you make
in those.
Do you make loans to car dealers and McDonald's franchise folks?
We have just started making loans available to car dealerships.
Okay.
Because we have reviewed.
How controlling? Does anybody know the business model of a car dealership? There is nobody that is controlled more than a car dealership by their company.
Well, then I would suggest that from our vantage point, based on our review on poultry loans, right, that if that is controlling to the point where even the very specifications of your broiler house is controlled, when you can walk into your broiler house is controlled, where you can walk in your broiler house is controlled, when the chicks are fed, when they're given medicine is controlled, and if you don't adhere to anything, you can lose your flock placement, you can lose your flock, and that automatically will cause you to default. That's controlling.
Mr. Ware, you're talking to somebody who's got millions of turkeys grown in his district.
Yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And the reason that they do that is because those birds are not owned by the individual.
Correct.
Those birds are owned by the company that puts them in there. And they require certain things. Just like if you were building a building, if you're the contractor, the owner says, I want this building built a certain way. I need these kinds of materials, and I want it built a certain way. And we have the architect to make sure that it stays there. These buildings and these birds are there's a business model that they want you to, just like any of the franchises with McDonald's or whether it's a Ford dealership. There's a certain level of integration of all of the different requirements that the franchise wants you to, as a franchisee, to put into your business model. The thing that concerns me here is you're forgetting about the rest of this business model. The rest of the business, these people don't raise just turkeys and chickens. They also normally have a cattle operation affiliated with this because they normally have enough land to spread the manure out, which is a commodity that's it's a really inexpensive way to fertilize your farm, and they will have an integrated cattle operation as well. So, and that's usually financed separately from this. And so, to answer the ranking member's question a while ago, the reason that these farmers come to the SBA for this is usually they're pretty highly leveraged. They're trying to get a new building, buy a new farm next to them, and they can't get this financing because of the amount of debt they're incurring because of the size of these buildings, which are several hundred feet long. So I'm trying to figure out here how you can get to this affiliated definition whenever you've got so many other businesses out here that are franchise operations that are much more controlled by the franchise company than what these folks are, because I know this model.
Can I answer?
You absolutely. I'm looking forward to your answer, sir.
We don't have an issue with any of those things. What we have an issue with is that they, by definition, by the by the CFR, they are not considered small. So from our
okay, what's your definition of small then?
Well, the CFR in particular concerning this with affiliation again goes back to such comprehensive control that management agreements is the exact term that's used in there. When the management
they don't control the entire operation, though, Mr. Ware. That's what I'm trying to get at you. They control only the poultry part of this operation. And the operation may be several hundred acres with several hundred head of cattle on it.
But that's not what the Small Business Administration would be putting their guarantee for.
They're guaranteeing the chicken, the land and the poultry buildings that are on there. You're the real estate and buildings. You're not guaranteeing the operation. The operation is completely different.
But Congressman, when these same contracts that they are guaranteed, when the flock placement isn't right and their flock placement goes away, so does the loan. And here
Mr.
comes the
Ware,
guarantee.
Mr. Ware, if I've got a car dealership and I'm not meeting my quotas, you know what happens? I lose my franchise.
Yeah.
I've got to sell X number of units per month. Otherwise, at the end of the month, I'm going to get a few more from the company. So now you've got another 30 days to sell all those on top of whatever else.
But I'm not sure your car dealership qualifies as a small business.
Mr. Mayor said, well, they're starting to do that now.
And we would like to take a look at that.
I mean, I can go through a whole list of franchise companies.
Yeah.
And we can talk about this all day. But my concern is that I think we're losing the, we're nitpicking here on this affiliate definition. I'm not sure you really understand the business model of what a poultry farmer really is all about.
I do understand the business model pretty well. I do understand it, and I'm saying that business model makes it affiliative by nature.
My time's expired.
Gentleman's time has expired. Since we have a relatively few number of members here today, we're going to go to a second round. I've just got one or two questions myself, and then I'm going to turn it over to the other members that are here. My question is this. I note that the terms for poultry loans over the last few years have been getting longer, going up to 20 years, whereas the contracts oftentimes are relatively short. And in fact, your flock, my understanding is 5 to 9 weeks or so. And I think if one of these small farmers, goes out of business or whatever, the contract isn't renewed, it can be a pretty tough business to sell, and you may get 6% on what you invested, the other 94% going away. So it's pretty challenging. So would both of you comment on the lengthening of these loans and the short period of the contract, and wouldn't the small business farmer in this case be better protected if these contracts, if that's something you took into consideration, that they were longer so they had more of an assurance that they could remain in business for a longer time to support their family? Mr. Manger?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So the regulations stipulate that the lender must evaluate the ability of the borrower to repay the loan. In some of the instances, specifically on the 11 loans that were analyzed, there was also the purchase of land involved. It was not solely for the construction of broiler houses. For the purchase of land, many times it would be necessary to a small rural farmer to be able to extend those payments out for a longer period of time in order to be able to acquire the property. So it's not solely based on contracts that the individual may have or the business may have. It's based on, again, their ability to repay the loan. And in this instance, in the loans I'm citing with the acquisition of property, that is really the main reason why such a long term was needed on the loan. It also doesn't control what other businesses the small business may enter into. As was said earlier by Congressman Lukemeyer, many times they would have a portion of the property maybe be for poultry, but they could be involved in other enterprises on other parts of the property, whether it be manure harvesting or other ventures. So again, it's not so reliant only on this one contract, especially in the acquisition of property, and the lender must again certify that the borrower has the ability to repay the loan.
Thank you. Mr. Ware, did you want to comment on that at all?
Sure. Yes, I need to comment on it because when the agency is giving loans to poultry farmers, it is for that purpose. In the defaulted loans that we reviewed, when the contracts went away, so did the poultry farm. So I think that is a very vital piece of whatever review would be made. And I believe that in the industry, from what I've studied, in the industry, they're moving towards their contracts in terms of the integrator and the farmers as being a little bit longer because of more conventional lending methods that's out there, and that's the only way that they would qualify for those.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to yield back, and ranking member is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Manger, I heard when you talk about some of the changes about excess land, equity injection. Those issues have nothing to do with the affiliation issue. So I know that you were not there in July 16 when when the IG presented its report. But I just would like to ask you, who signed off into the changes that were made, particularly knocking out the economic dependence or business contract affiliation? Who did that?
That was done by the previous administration. I'm not sure if it was signed off by the person that had the associate administrator position in capital access, or
Can you
whether it
get
was-
back to us?
Yes, or
Okay.
possibly the administrator at the time.
Well, I'm gonna, if those changes were made, and I would like to know who signed off into accepting those changes, because this is a very important issue, the issue of affiliation. And if I have to introduce legislation to go to the original affiliation issue, I'm gonna do that, okay? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady yields back. We had one other member who we thought was on his way, but in light of the fact that he is not here, I think we're going to wrap up this hearing. We appreciate the gentlemen giving their testimony here this morning. Looking back for. So it's an important industry. There are obviously some questions here. We would ask our committee staff to continue to work with the SBA to make sure that all the appropriate regulations and the loans that are being made are being made in a proper manner, and that with the dollars that we have available are going to actually help small businesses and the families that they support. And so we will continue to follow this topic. I would ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and submit supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we're adjourned. Thank you.